they say, leave it. It won't work. Who does it? You want to do payments? Go to Western Europe, go to United States, of course. Back then, even the Far East was still not the big thing on payments, but say Africa.
What's the craziest thing that you've witnessed here in Africa during your business times?
And then you get a phone call, you're in the pool, and your assistant tells you just received a phone call from the regulator in Zambia that if you won't be there within 24 hours, they close your business. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa, it's not a country. It's a continent.
You're very passionate about flying.
Oh,
Why is flying so special?
First, Tobi, thanks for bringing me here. It's difficult for me even to start because when you speak about flying, or when I speak about flying, it's like it's a sensation for me. I think I don't remember from which age of 10 or something, I always dream of flying. That was my dream. That's the only thing I really wanted to do. And the freedom, to see things from above, to be able to hover, I love it. It's something which very important for me, always was. But flying, it's a big subject. I'm sure here and there we'll dive into it, but it's something which runs with me forever.
I mean, flying is not only for you personally a big part, but also throughout your career, everything. A lot of things evolve around flying. If I understand it correctly, when was the first time you got into actual flying? You always had that dream, but when was your first time with flying?
It went well in the beginning. When I was, it's not that I'm not young right now, but when I was younger, I flew helicopters. I flew some passenger aircrafts. So at the beginning, it was exactly what I wanted. And I realized and I understood that this is really what I like. And today I can say it shaped most of back then it was my future, now it's the past, but it shaped major part of my life. The discipline, the procedure, the responsibility, to think always 3 steps ahead to make sure that you cover all aspects. There's no such thing, I forgot to do one thing because... And at a certain point of time, I realized that it is something I really like, but it's not my real dream. And this is where I started the other journey. I can say the journey of my life, which I guess brought me here. But flying was what brought me into that dream, and also what happened or what currently happens after the dream.
It's interesting. I have a friend who is an entrepreneur, quite successful entrepreneur, comes from a family business in Germany. And we're talking about these topics, leadership, resilience. And he told me, all my friends that are pilots, they're so calm. They're just really calm and resilient, and you don't even see that they're stressed. Is there some truth to that?
I don't think so. We are all stressed. Come on, you should see. You just mentioned stress. I remember so many episodes and so many scenarios. We are all human beings, and yes, I truly believe that it's not only pilots, but there are those people which knows how to cross that stressful moment or time and to control themselves, but stress is there. And I think it's quite human to be stressed. As I mentioned before, many things that I took from the flying space helped me to manage those scary moments. But of course, many times I was super scared, stressed. Usually I don't use the word panic, but inside the anxiety is all over. But pilots, they just know how to control it and to contain it, but it's there. Trust me.
I mean, we were just previously talking that 7 years ago, we just had our pre-chat, was very welcoming.
Yeah.
Very nice. But a couple of years ago, it wasn't that way. You would have been very much, you would have been very cautious about every minute that you were spending. What happened in between? Why are you now a lot less stressed, or how do you reflect on that time period?
It looks like different life. I love, to looking back to those life. As I mentioned before, it's like the story of my life. Quite stressful one. And you find yourself in those moments when you realize that every second needs to be managed. There is no such thing to do one thing. You're multitasking, you are multi-thinking, and the abrupt change from moving from such a busy environment to times that, whoa, there is time now to read a book, there are times to think, there is a time to relax a bit. That's a major change. It happened to me in the last, now it's almost 4 years since I left DPO. And it's like a different life. It's like I was reborn again. I think the first time I was reborn when I decided not to fly and move to business. And this is the second time that I gave birth to a new me. And it's quite interesting. I love it.
It's interesting that you talk about being reborn. You know how it is with athletes. They usually say athletes die twice because they have their career. And then obviously, in comparison to entrepreneurs, they have to leave their career sometime because just physically it's just not possible. Is that something that you can relate with? Do you mean that was being reborn, basically?
You just said something. I will answer that, Tobi, but you just said that I think that also entrepreneurs, most of them, not all, because each one is different. I'm not saying that exactly an athlete. Yes, maybe it's another secret. I don't think you know, but I also used to do Olympic triathlons. But that's a different story. What I'm saying is that as an entrepreneur, it's someone which led quite a demanding operation. One day I realized my time is up. I'm not a politician. I don't want to hold it, forever and to be in the controls. And I realized that this specific career ended, and I need to hand over to the next generation. And I guess this is what brought me into that process of, reborn, to create a new persona, a new person, which it came naturally. But exactly as you said, those athletes realize that I can't do it anymore. I need to create something new. And I think this is what happened.
Eran, something that I'm very excited about in our conversation is also talking about Africa. That's very close to your heart, Africa. And I think to start off with that conversation, it would be really interesting to understand, because you moved to Africa, I think it was in 2006, if I'm not mistaken, or around that time. Anyways, but I'm very curious about, you're from Israel, actually. What was the reaction from, let's say, your inner circle in Israel about Africa, you taking the move to Africa, building a business in Africa, I mean, what was their reaction? What's maybe something that, shocking is maybe the wrong word, but there's something that fascinated them, shocked them, both in a positive way and negative way?
It's not even a bit. It's a lot of both. I will start with a small anecdote, a story, but a true story. If one day you will meet my mom, she will confirm that. But I remember few weeks or few months after, back then I moved to Nairobi with a small family, 3 very young kids. It was basically nothing. I had a company of 2 or 3 people. And even today, I think that I was a bit crazy. I don't know how to call it. And my mom called me and tell me, everything is fine. Do you have enough water? I told her, listen, Mom, once a day we're allowed to climb down the tree and go to the supermarket and buy some water. I said, it's fine. It's not what you think it is. I'm not inside this, in the middle of the savannah and begging the lions to give me some water. It was a shock. And I can tell you that even people around me in Africa, which heard about the concept, the business, they say, leave it, it won't work. Who does it? You want to do payments? Go to Western Europe, go to United States, of course. Back then, even the Far East was still not the big thing on payments, but say Africa. But I think that I remember it for many years. I had a drive that when people tells me, listen, it's complicated, I say, fine, I will do it. Fine, we will need to move this mountain, we'll do it step by step, but we will do it. But it wasn't easy with the people which were close to me. Business side, partners, friends, family. I can tell you that even now that I live in South Africa, which is not necessarily Africa, people still sometimes doesn't believe. They say, what are you doing there? Why Africa? And I'm sure that this will be our next, one of the chapters that we're going to speak about. Why Africa and what happened.
Yeah. You just mentioned your company. There's also apparently a very interesting story around how you started building your company here in Africa. Would be lovely to hear that and to understand what was the trigger moment like for you to make the bold move to Africa, and what were you building? It wasn't the payments company. We all hear a lot about these payments companies elsewhere, but what was DPO? What was your company doing?
Yeah. Fortunately and unfortunately, it's not my company anymore, and I'm proud of that I handed over to the next generation. Actually, it started not as a payments company. Not many people knows that, but in 2006, it was something like 6 years after I decided not to fly anymore. I was in the to say high tech, but I been into few companies around a booking system, websites. And my last job, I was a GM of a small development group. I had 25 web developers. But I always ask myself, why you work for others? Something inside told me you need to do something based on your passion, your direction. And in 2005, I was in Israel. Yes, you're right. I did my computer science MBA, like a standard Israeli. And I receive a phone call, and someone in Hebrew tells me, "Listen, you don't know me, but I heard of you. I'm a CEO of a small airlines again, aircrafts in Kenya. We fly many to the Masai Mara, and we would like to launch an online booking engine, 2005. He said, and no one wants to speak with us because in Africa, and I heard that you did it before in Israel because you run some IT companies. Do you mind to just come to Kenya just to speak? Just like that. And I told him, okay, book me a ticket. And I flew to Kenya. I'd never been anywhere in Africa before. And it was my first time. I landed in Nairobi. And it was like the big bang, everything has been changed. I met wonderful people. I met people in a small airline. And not to make it too long, I went back to Israel. I called one of my friends. I told him, listen, I'm about to resign from my job. I don't like it anymore. Do you mind to join me and we will build a new booking engine for a small airline? He told me, who builds booking engines for airline? Go and buy it somewhere. I said, no, I want to build my own booking engine. He was a developer, a genius. And he said, no, fine, let's do it. And we sat down in a small room, and for 6 months, we of course convinced that airline to pay us this. That was the seed money. I said, listen, I want $100,000 for this booking engine. And the first product that I released that was my own product wasn't payments. It was an online booking engine for a small airline. When we launched it, we looked for a payment solution and we couldn't find anything in Africa. I went back to Israel. I met another friend. I called another friend of mine. I told, listen, can we convince 2 processors in Israel to process payments for an airline in Africa? He told me, you are crazy. I said, let's try. And we did it. So I had like a side business of the payments. But for the first 3 years, I was only in the airlines industry. By the way, that same booking engine, I left it after a few years to do only the payments. It's one of the leading engines in the world today for small airlines, 90 airlines, something like that. So it's still there. But after a few years, I realized that payments more interesting than booking engines. So we split. I sold for $1 my shares in the airlines business, and I took the payments. I moved to Nairobi because you cannot manage anything in Africa from remotely. And I started to work on the payments business.
What is the difference exactly between the booking engine and the payments business, if you could explain to me? Because there's also, I assume, a bit of a parallel,
Yeah.
What is the intersection? What's the difference between those two?
I will use very simple words. The booking engine will arrange you the seat, and the payments will make sure that your card will pay for that seat. So the payments business was purely about payments. To process the actual payment transaction, you can call it the PayPal for Africa. To launch this specific phase when the customer wants to pay. Back then, early 2006, 7, 8, there was a big gap. Europeans, Americans, whatever wants to travel to Africa. We started mainly on the tourism where there is inbound traffic from Western Europe and United States. There was a problem how to pay. We processed, by the way, the first online payment card transaction in the sub-Saharan in 2006. This was the first online transaction apart from South Africa, which is a different story. And we basically allowed those foreigners to do what today it's so simple, but to pay online for their services. So we were focused only on the payments, only on that. The rest, booking engine availability, classes, whatever, this is something else.
But was that trend the thing that almost triggered that pivot almost to focus on payment? The fact that these foreign people came oftentimes for tourism and they wanted to have a payment solution. Was that the trigger that led you to actually pivot the business a bit?
No, the trigger is that nice guy. He retired. I'm still in touch with him, the CEO of that airline in Nairobi. He took me to a flight in Israel. He now lives in Israel a few years ago. And the trigger is the online booking engine. He asked, because I never thought of payments. Never. I love, we spoke about it in length, that I love aviation. And so when someone asked me, let's develop a booking engine, of course, it's about airlines. And initially, I look for a payment solution only because it's like any other component in the system. You need, and only after 2 or 3 years, I say, wait a second, this component generates lots of transactions. So it's not one system, it's hundreds of thousands of transactions. So let's move from the system side to the transactional side. But you are right, something triggered that. So the payments was a sub-product that became the main story.
Eran, I think, there's lots to unfold, but I think it's really worth it to understand payments. I think it's sometimes a topic that is a bit, not so tangible for someone to grasp, difficult to grasp what's payments, but you have all these companies. In Europe, you have a huge company. In the US, you have huge, very well-known companies that are have high valuations and process these payments, and they're really significant companies. Can you share with me what do payment companies actually do?
Yeah.
What's sort of the value proposition? Where do they generate their value? Why is it such a good business? And what is the difference between, let's say, the players that are maybe in Europe and the US that have had a lot of success and the one payment company you've built here in Africa? And why was it so, unique maybe in Africa? What is so unique about the payment landscape in Africa?
It's a great question. Also, that was, we can say, my style or part of the story, that we never created something new. We took something which was, or process which was well known in many parts of the world, and we brought it into a virgin land, a place that it was never been tested before, never been run before. Because when it comes to payments, mainly online payments, the actual concept is quite simple. Because I don't know, just before we started, my son was on the line. He needs to make a transaction somewhere, so he's not here. And if he wants to pay for a service which is here, some kind of a payment service needs to allow him to enter his payment details, payment card details, to create some kind of a process that will verify that these details are correct, that he have enough money in his card, and then to send a debit request to his bank and credit request or credit demand into the business bank. And that's not the end, because after this electronic transaction, the money needs to move from that bank overseas to the business bank in Nairobi, in Harare, or whatever. So a payments company will wrap everything in one process, which, if everything works well, takes a second or less than 3 seconds to verify that the customer can pay, which whatever form of payment they use, and to process the transaction in a way that after a few hours, few days, when we started, it took almost 60 days, the actual money will also be credited to the merchant account. Of course, since it's online, there are lots of elements. The security, lots of regulatory aspects, and license, and many things which involve in this process. But at the end of the day, it's to create the actual payment transaction. This is what the payments company does.
Can you share with me what was the volume of transactions that you process with that company? Because I think that's a very interesting number. And also, maybe how does it compare to other payment providers elsewhere?
So I mentioned before, I think it was December 2006 or November, the first transaction. In the first few months, we had, 6, 7, 20 transactions. I remember at the peak, before I left, if we just look at South Africa, we process. They still process the big guys here. For example, there is a company here called Mr. Delivery. They do most of the deliveries for Takealot. Takealot is like the local Amazon. And I remember every day between 12 to 2, they do mainly food deliveries, like Uber Eats. In the peak, we had, 50, 60, 70,000 transactions per hour during those deliveries. We
only in South Africa.
That was only South Africa. Yeah, you are right. And we were we processed at the peak in 23 African countries, from Ethiopia and Tanzania on the east, all the way to Dakar, to Senegal, Ivory Coast, Ghana, and in the west. We were it was big, the biggest online processor In terms of volumes or value, it was billions of dollars per month. If you compare to big companies in Western Europe, United States, unfortunately, Africa is still not there. Depends where in Africa. Okay, we can, if I'm not looking at countries like Egypt, which is highly developed, but in terms of payments, it was, for Africa, it was quite impressive. But we always wanted to do more like the big guys from, if you know Square from United States, all the big guys in Western Europe. But it was quite impressive.
Just said, unfortunately. Why, unfortunately? Just to really understand that, is the transaction volume a good indicator for specific things that I need to be aware of?
No, maybe unfortunately it's a bit too harsh, but Africa for me, it's the story of my life. So I always say, Africa, come on, we should be the biggest all over the world. There is a huge potential. One great example is the mobile money. In most of our markets, we process mainly mobile money, not credit cards. I remember that in one of the conferences I did a presentation. I tell guys, you don't get it, but for example, in Kenya, people doesn't have a physical wallet since 2008. Who heard of Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or PayPal in big volumes in 2008? Why? Because they use mobile money. And when it comes to mobile money, the rest of the world is not even close to the volumes you have in Africa. And still, in general, the volumes are lower. It's a big continent, lots of people, but it's quite small compared to Western Europe or United States. I'm saying unfortunately because I think it can be much bigger. It's still not there in terms of the focus, in terms of business relationship between countries here and around the world. But it's getting there, step by step. We say pole pole. It's like step after step.
What's pole pole?
Pole pole in South Africa, it's like in Dubai they will say shwaye shwaye. It's, slowly, all right? There's one thing you can't control in Africa, only one thing. It's the time. It doesn't matter. I remember I used to say to big guys from London, they want to come, they say, we can bring so much money. I say, guys, it doesn't matter how much money you bring, time cannot be controlled in Africa. If something that takes time, it will take time. Doesn't matter if you want to invest another $1 billion, you won't be able to get the regulator approval within a week. It won't work like that. So this is something I always told everyone, just be patient.
You mean time when it comes to talking to regulators?
You need to be patient. It's everywhere. You need to be patient because in many parts of this continent, it moves differently. My beautiful, amazing friends in Tanzania, they have their own time. They work differently than the guys in Ghana or Nigeria. And things, I'm not saying slowly, but takes time. You get in the rhythm, you understand. Sometimes it's not slowly, but that's the rhythm of these. Sometimes it's because there are some challenges. Infrastructure, a lack of advanced regulation, lack of systems, lack of communication. But that's something that I learned quite quickly.
Yeah, Eran, I think, Eran, what comes to my mind is, so you're curious a bit about my background. It's your podcast, but I want to share something with you. So I'm half Brazilian, half German, and I'm also obsessed with podcasts and these business things.
Yeah.
Also one of the reasons why I'm doing it myself now, but also consuming it from others. And it's really fascinating to hear your story, because I think those stories, especially stories which are not in the US, not in Europe, they're oftentimes totally overlooked. And these elements that you've said, I mean, in Brazil, for instance, we have pigs.
Yeah.
You know, it's also totally different. We're a lot more advanced than in Germany, actually.
Yeah.
In Germany, we still pay a lot by cash. And it's interesting, right? Those are topics that are totally not on the radar of people outside. I don't know, how do you experience it when you go back to Israel or to Western countries? Not sure if you ever go there. Do you notice that people are not really aware of what's happening in Africa and elsewhere?
They don't. I remember, we used to take the family once a year to visit Israel. After all, it's there. The kids were born there and the family. And I remember tend to Israel. I'm there for a month, and I can't use my African credit cards in Israel. So I called one of my friends and said, "Why?" He said, fraud, risk. I said, guys, in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Uganda, Rwanda, Botswana, or where we launch our own business, we process in 1 hour cards from anywhere in the world. Anywhere. We have no rules because we actually check each transaction. But in Israel, we decided to block all cards from Africa. Now, exactly as you said, no one realized that, we built in Nairobi our African Fraud Prevention Center. And Visa, I remember they sent a delegation to see what we're doing there. And they were in shock. They say, you guys built it yourself, right? Say, yeah, you never bought any of those cyber and all these fraud. They say, no, we develop it for Africa. And I said, there's no such thing anywhere in the world. So I understand what you're saying about Brazil. Yes, many people around the world, they don't really understand. They don't understand what is the potential and what has been developed here or can be developed here.
What is the potential of Africa? Maybe talking to these guys, these London guys that you've encountered who were willing to spend enormous amounts of capital and deploy it in Africa. What would you tell these people? What's the potential of Africa? Why is it such an amazing place also for business?
It's such a relevant question, and I don't think my answer will be the same as it used to be. Let's start with the potential. All right, how many people knows, the population of some countries? I'll give you some examples. Ethiopia. Do you know how many people live there? Any idea?
I'm asking the questions.
Exactly. Around 100 million people. DRC, 90 million. Tanzania, 60 million, give or take. Now, that's big. And the potential of the consumer side, it's beyond any imagination. Especially that, unlike, for example, the Far East, of course, I won't compare to Western Europe or United States, but take the Far East, it wasn't explored yet. How many big or global companies dive into Africa and offer what they can offer? So one is the potential. It's big. It's big. It's big. It's big. It's massive. This is one. Second, it was most of it still not open or been developed in a way that you can find what you can find in other places. And it's a big continent. It's not a country. The variety are so many different markets. So there is lots of potential. Lots of potential.
Eran, you told me before that currently you really want to also talk about the topic, okay, your story is really truly a story of building from and for Africa. That's what we sort of discussed earlier. And I really want to understand what you mean with that. Maybe first, what's the craziest thing that you've witnessed here in Africa during your business times? What's something?
Don't go there because crazy now. I'm kidding. Many things crazy in the most beautiful way is wasn't been planned, but I realized after a few years that I was the only foreigner in the whole group. The whole idea is to work with locals. And we used to call it the DPO Academy in Nairobi, bring all team members from all over Africa to be educated, to be trained. And one thing which is crazy when we usually they used to come for 1 or 2 weeks, and at the end of these 2 weeks you do like a party, and then you have 40 or 50 or 60 team members, each one with its own traditional custom from somewhere in Africa, and it's shocking. You look at it and say, I don't know, it's like the United Nations. You say, what the heck? It's beautiful. On the other side, crazy, you in beautiful island, having one weekend with the family that you can breathe a bit. And then you get a phone call, you're in the pool, and your assistant tells you just receive a phone call from the regulator in Zambia that if you won't be there within 24 hours, they close your business. Saturday morning, what do you mean 24 hours? Out of the blue, and they will close your business if you won't be there. So crazy can go. I don't know. One of the risk committees, we had we sit and analyze fraud cases, and the transaction pop up, and I see, hey, wait a second, this is my friend from I think it was from Germany. Someone I know this guy. You see crazy stuff, but not only in Africa, but there are some unique. I was the Nairobi traffic, to be stuck with 2 of your team members between meetings, and you stuck for so many hours that you order a pizza to the car because it's been 4 hours and you're not moving anywhere, so you're hungry. So, lots of story.
What about the story with the 24 hours? How did that go out? Or how did that turn out?
Regulators, for a few years, when we used to sit down and do risk analysis, always at the top of, not always number one, but at the top of the list is regulators. Not in a way that it's a risk for the business, but when you reach a certain level, when you become bigger and bigger, one day you cross that threshold that regulators cannot not looking into your business, which is good because you are big. Now, if you walk in the European Union, fine, there is a regulator, United States regulator. But now imagine you're in 23 countries, 23 different licenses, 23 different payment association or payments regulators. And many of these regulators just started to understand what is online payments. So you need to pay lots of attention for that. It's not only the language, it's not only the local rules, it's the culture, the way you speak. Remember one of my assistants, she was half Ethiopian. She told me, you go to Ethiopia, you stop with your not so smart jokes. I'm one of those that I like jokes. Sometimes it's good, sometimes say, do not joke. They don't understand jokes.
Really?
You need to be serious. This is what they expect from a businessman which comes to their country. Don't start with a joke. But I'm stubborn. I'm sometimes a bit dumb. The first thing I go for the regulator, I started the meeting with some kind of a joke. And they look at the door, just, do me a favor, go. Come again. So you need to know that regulator in Zambia, they were not hostile, but that was their style. And if you think they're hostile, you go there with the wrong approach. You need to understand that's the way it works in Zambia. If they tell you to come, you leave everything because they want to see the CEO. They don't want to see any of his representative. You need to understand that for them, if they will see you, they will find a solution. But this is where the Nigerians, they have their own way to approve payment processors. One of them, they want each of the directors, especially the CEO, to come for a security debrief. So they send you to Abuja, to the Secret Service headquarters. And they put me in a room, no windows, No, even one piece, nothing, no phone, of course, no laptop, you are not allowed even to take your pen. I was sitting on a seat with a bare naked table for 7 hours waiting for the interview, 7 hours, disconnected from the world. Now, they don't do it because they want to torture, because they were busy with something. Just like that. That's the culture. Now, they are beautiful people once you get to know them, but they think differently. So if you see the 7 hours, say they do it intentionally, you won't survive. So regulators, it's anyone which wants to build a business in more than one country in this continent needs to be ready for that. Needs to learn and to understand it's a different kind of operation.
How was a regular week of yours at the peak? You know, how was it? Because you're telling me things. We were talking previously, or you just shared with us already how stressful you were and how every second was sort of needed to have a purpose. Can you tell me how a week of Eran was, maybe a couple of years ago? How would a week look like? Were you traveling all around Africa as well? And then occasionally sitting in traffic for 7 hours, ordering pizza, then doing all-nighters. You're an entrepreneur, working like non-stop, I assume. How was a week for you?
Reminds me of Britney Spears. She's the one which is crazy. You know the song? You drive me crazy. It was crazy. But in a good way. I loved it. It's the adrenaline, the excitement, those incidents, for example, it gives you wake up in the morning and they call you, we have a problem. Sometimes say, okay, tell me what's going on. Let me put it this way. The story I'm telling, it's not maybe it's unique, but it's not unique. I'm not the first person you speak with that built his own business with his partners and led the company. A typical week was a wonderful week, exciting, super busy. After all, it's still, but it was an operational business. Means it works 24/7. Doesn't matter where. You cannot stop it. You cannot say, okay, we take 1 week to think. There's no such thing because it's payments. It runs all the time. So a typical week, I used to travel a lot. I truly believe that I should put my hands deep into the ground and feel the soil everywhere. I truly believe that a business leader should show his face where the business operates. Lots of trips around Africa, everywhere. I know, Zanzibar, Windhoek in Namibia, DRC, whatever, everywhere. Lots of operational stuff. At a certain point of time, we started with the M&As. This is where our amazing, wonderful people, our partners, the private equity found that believed in us. They took us into this journey of M&A. So that took also a lot of time to take over companies. Most of the M&A was here in South Africa, big companies. So that takes a lot of time to learn. When you purchase a company or take over a company like PayFast, that's a big operation. And how to merge and how to create one business from all of it. So it was quite busy.
How does M&A compare maybe in Africa to let's say maybe Western Europe or the US? What are typical rules that are unique to South Africa, to Africa as a whole, and when it comes to M&A?
Tell you a secret. Though many people know that. I don't know. I remember when the investors started the process with us, they told me, listen, we want to invest this amount of money. I said, but I don't need so much. I want 1/3. I say, no. You listen to us. You take what we offer. We cut it by half. Half will do what you know how to do. Organic growth, to increase your business. The second half, we will teach you how to do an M&A. because I was honest. I told him I never did anything like that. Never. Before DPO, I never, dealt with anything like that. So I cannot compare. I can tell you that when you do M&A, there are many people which wants to give you advice, to tell you what to do. And very quickly we realize, guys, we will do it our way. So I don't know how it works in other regions. For us, we had a concept which the basic was not to make any drastic change. The first thing, no change. The fact that there is new owner means nothing. The CEO remains, the company remains. Yes, some kind of maybe some different communication, but the business won't be changed. With some M&As, it took us 3 to 4 years just to start to make the change to merge it. But at the end of the day, it was very successful. It was a successful process. Most of the founders of the companies we acquired stayed with us and continued to manage their companies until they found the right time to leave. So it was a success story.
And ultimately, DPO also got acquired, right?
Yeah.
There must have been a big moment in your life. How do you look back at that acquisition and maybe also from a transaction perspective? That'd be interesting, and how the company moved on, but also I think it's a good segue to you personally. What changed?
Yeah, and and this is also something I always happy to share with other entrepreneurs, anyone that in this position. I realize, or I remember the day that I realized that this is the time. This is the time. I mentioned that when we just started to speak, when to hand over. When you realize that you're doing well, it's fine, it's growing, you are the biggest and things are nice. But I realized that it's time for the company to move to its next level. And I don't think I'm the right person or the best person to lead the company into the future, or that future. And I was lucky to work with an amazing team. My partners, one of them also is a co-founder, and the investors, and they listen to me and immediately say, you know what, we understand. Give us between up to 2 years, we'll sell the business. So I asked them and they accepted to start a process to sell the company. So it was planned. We knew that this is what we want to do. It's a very, very demanding process, especially when you have a complicated or very complex business. One small thing, to sell a payments business, you need to get the regulator approval. Now, when you have 23 regulators, that's quite complicated. Fair competition, and just name it. But to go back to where we started this question, it was a clear process, well defined, that we are ready to sell the group. Let's do it properly. The first few months, we made few major mistakes the way we operated, and then we stopped and said, let's reorganize ourselves and go into a well-organized process. And yes, it took a bit less than 2 years, but around 2 years, and we managed to do it.
I'll be wondering, I know you're not the M&A guy, you told me, but, and you said you were preparing for it 2 years. How does that valuation, there was probably a valuation also in the news, something you can share if you want to.
No, it's not a secret, because the company that acquired DPO, it's a public company. They trade in the London Stock Exchange. Then the price is, it's all over the media, and it was around just a bit below $300 million. It was I think, one of the biggest transactions back then. It was tough negotiation. The evaluation, it's like when you sell a company, evaluation can vary. It can be based on your transaction, on your income, on your potential income, how many customers. I know that when companies, especially companies which process a lot but still lose money, they try to evaluate payments companies based on how many merchants they have. So the company that acquired them think of the potential of the business. The company that acquired DPO, it's the same business, so they understood very well how it works. Also a payments company.
And I mean, we could talk on for hours, but how did it personally change your life? You stepped down from DPO and from the group, and what have you been doing since then? How does your life look like right now? What excites you? What's top of mind? What are things how has it changed?
Yeah.
We talked about the week that was truly busy a couple of years ago. How is it now? How is the week now?
So, during the process, when you sell your company, you don't have time to think what happened after. You have no time because it's even much worse because you are so busy, and now you need to report to more people, because when you sell your company, usually they will ask you, especially the leader, to stay. I was requested to stay almost 2 years. After a year and a half, I left, give or take. And in this year and a half, you have new masters, first time in your life, or in this life, you have new masters. You need to report to them. It took the time. It took its time, and then one day I realized I'm done, and I left. And I did something that if you take me 5, 6, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, I will I never predicted that I will go this direction, never. I decided to slow down, to make the third change of my life, and to start looking inside, to start looking at myself, to invest in one thing, which is me. So first thing I've done is to take a clear decision that I'm not looking to work for anyone at this point of time. I really want to help other people which runs their business, and here and there I select those people which I believe in, and will give them my free advice and my support and my share my experience. And the rest is it's around my family, my new love in life, my hobbies, and passion. You do everything differently when you have time and you find yourself in a more relaxed environment. But it's like, as I mentioned before, I was born again. Now as a different person, and I like it. So I have time these days.
Great. You just mentioned that this new time that also has taught you things. How do you reflect back on the previous chapters in your life? Was it worth it even? Because, I mean, building a company that also demands a lot of sacrifice, a lot of trade-offs. How do you look back? You're also talking about your soul, right? It's very deep. How do you reflect back to that time,
You pay the price, by the way. It's remember one time one of my daughters told me that, Daddy, you were not there. You were there. You are a wonderful dad, but you had no time, even for yourself. And to hear something like that from your daughter, it breaks your heart. And then she tells you, now, finally, we can see who you are in a different way. You need to sacrifice a lot. But I truly believe that you either do it all the way, because I'm one of those that I don't believe in luck. Maybe because I never had luck. I needed to create my luck. I'm not one of these wonder boys that, started a company and 2 years after that, Amazon or Google bought this kind by $2 billion. No. So looking backward, I love everything I've done and no regrets. Yes, I know how to acknowledge and recognize where I suffered, where I sacrificed, but it's the story of my life. I'm proud of it. I left behind a few hundreds of people, which is part of an amazing company. They're still there. And these days, they manage the company. They did it. None of them left. They are the ones which runs the business after I left. And when they joined us, they knew nothing about payments. Nothing. So I'm really proud. And also it's my life, Africa is part of my life, and I love it. If I go back in time, maybe I will do it a bit better, but I won't change anything.
Maybe if you were to give a title to, you just mentioned the story of my life, but do you have any title in mind? Anything that?
Yeah, I told you just before we started that on one of the machines I currently have and operate, I asked to write on part of this machine something very simple, which means a lot for me. And what I wrote there is for Africa. So I think that's the title, because I truly believe that we had a slogan that we build a payments business for Africa, by Africa. So I think that's the title of more than half of my life. It's what I've done for Africa and what Africa did for me, because it was all around that.
What else can we do for Africa? What are things? Maybe you're also working with tons of entrepreneurs, right? You're supporting younger people, probably also a lot of them, I assume most of them in Africa.
Yeah, only Africa.
Only Africa. Is that your policy? Almost,
no, not policy. It's what I know, because I also, I won't call it to be modest, but I truly don't know how to, if you will ask me, help me to build a payments business in Germany or in the United States, it's not, maybe I can learn, but I never done it before. I don't know. So yes, I try to help Africans entrepreneurs, which believes in Africa. What can we do? I will just think of two things, or I mention two things. One, to respect each part of this continent, not to try and patronize, always to respect, to understand the environment where you go. And the second thing, do not afraid. Go and do it. If you believe in something, don't let anyone slow you down. It doesn't matter what they say. Go and do it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Eran, one last question, which I like to ask oftentimes, and I think it is also maybe very reflective to what you've lived through with your bold move to go to Africa, which is not, intuitive, maybe if we consider your background. What's a major misconception that someone has maybe about your story specifically, or about Africa? Because I think it's a big part of your story. What's something that most people don't get?
One of the greatest people I met, Nigerian expert in payments. I remember a presentation in Milan, beautiful place. And the first thing he said, ladies and gentlemen, Africa, it's not a country. It's a continent. Why is that? There are still people which tells me, you lived in Africa. Wasn't tough in Nigeria? I say, guys, I lived in Kenya. Do you know how wide, how big is the distance, how big this continent is? It's a continent. And that's the major thing I want people that listen to us to understand. It's a massive continent. 52 countries, if I remember correctly, and usually I remember correctly when it comes to Africa. Respect that, understand that. And that's one of the misconceptions which is out there. If it's Africa, guys, there's no such thing Africa. There are so many countries. That's it.
Wonderful. Eran, hey, thank you very much for showing up.
Karibu sana.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks for inviting me, Tobi. Thanks. It's wonderful. I really enjoyed.
Cool. Wonderful. Thanks.